I've been wanting to make a video like this for a good while now. Hey everyone, my name's Christian Verstappen, and I have a lot to say about many things. I want to talk about myself. More specifically, I want to talk about the content of this channel and I guess where to go from here, how I'm handling certain reactions, responses, etc. to my content. So, yeah, with that in mind, let's get into it. The core essence of everything in regards to this channel, the reason, there's a reason that the first video and the mission statement, if you will, of the channel is nuance and discussion. There's a reason that the first video was the importance of nuance and discussion. It was extremely important to me that that be, for one, the video that set everything off, as well as the video that, or the, something that really kind of explained my points and my ideas, broadly speaking. Now, for a while, of course, I was doing, videos like that, where it was very specifically, I did one about like the red pill, incels, all these different things. And then a couple videos in, I started doing more reaction content, and I slowly transitioned into only doing reaction content. And I have no problem with making that kind of content. But what I've noticed is that for whatever reason, um, a lot of the stuff that I talk about here, I've wanted to make a video titled "Who I Am and Why I Do What I Do" for a long time, because I wanted to have something out there that properly explained who I am and why I do what I do. And if I keep making this kind of content, then I will eventually do that. Whether I reach 500 subs, or um, uh, my birthday comes first, whichever comes first. That was the idea, was to make a video just really explaining all that. But what I've noticed lately is, and I hope you'll forgive my kind of like rambling here, there's not really like a specific kind of coherent process of going through everything, which is part of the point. There's also a reason that I named the channel after myself. I didn't use a fake name, I didn't use anything like that. My go-to online name for everything has been CAV15 for a long time. That, like, I was 13 when I came up with that. But like, that's my go-to username. If I wanted to have an online username, that would have been my username. Um, but it wasn't about hiding behind an identity. It was about the exact opposite of that. The whole concept of this channel and everything that I've done up to this point has been to give my thoughts, my ideas, my opinions on really whatever I want. Now, that does lean and is primarily geared towards social and political stuff, because that's just, kind of hot button stuff that everybody's talking about and thinking about, etc. And ultimately, my hope, I guess you could say, is for people to just chill out. Again, a lot of this is stuff that I'll probably go into more detail if I ever do a video about who I am and why I do what I do. But you see, I was raised relatively conservative. I was raised Christian, and I had right-leaning parents. How I remember when I was growing up, my dad would tell me um, these like horror stories of people, of like this idea that the government under Obama at the time was like building concentration camps for Christians and Catholics, because he was Catholic and he very much had that. Um, and that they were building these concentration camps and we were going to be treated like the Jews were in Nazi Germany. And I was terrified of this. I remember when I was like 11, 10, 11 years old, something like that, thinking and being afraid of like the CIA breaking into our house and kidnapping us in the middle of the night. One thing you have to understand, and again, this is something that I would get into more specifically if I ever do that video, I would keep alluding to here. One thing you have to understand about a lot of, Christianity, and I would imagine religion in general, but at least Christianity, is there's very much a persecution complex that a lot of people have, largely because the Bible straight up says we're going to be persecuted for our beliefs. So if we're not actually being persecuted, which we weren't, and they aren't, um, you like make up the persecution essentially. So like that's a big part of it as well. And I fell into a lot of that stuff, right? I very much believed in that, and a lot of these I had very more conservative and reactionary beliefs due to my upbringing. In 2020, that all changed because basically I started getting involved or interested more in political stuff and everything. But the big thing that changed it for me was seeing the actual murder of George Floyd in broad daylight, like a video where someone just filmed it, the cops did it, and nothing like happened from it. Like they weren't reprimanded, they weren't like nothing happened. They like looked at the kids filming as they did it, and it's like it was insane. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if I was in that position, I'd want to like run up and kick the cop in the head and save the guy, something like that. I mean, everybody thinks that they're going to be the hero in in these situations, right? In actuality, I would have been more likely to just freeze and maybe film like the kids did, maybe not, maybe do nothing. I don't know. But what I do know is that was the point that I realized I had to do something. I had to start actually paying attention to politics. I had been relatively familiar with the culture war and things of that nature because, I mean, everybody is, whether we want to be or not. But, like, I pretty much lived online since 2009, 10, somewhere around there, 8, somewhere, like I was 12 or something when I started, like, living on specifically YouTube. What was interesting, though, was I think largely because of the type of content that I enjoy and the types of video games that I enjoy, I never got into the whole Gamergate thing. I had heard about it because of people like Rich of Review Tech USA, but I never specifically got into Gamergate, the concept. The con- the gaming channels that I was into were people doing like let's plays and reviews of like Nintendo games and stuff, or Sonic the Hedgehog, or Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, stuff like this, retro games and things of that nature. But I didn't really give a damn about Halo or Grand Theft Auto or whatever the new big game by Bethesda or some other company was. I didn't care about the mainstream stuff. And for whatever reason, the people that cared more about this retro stuff, at least in regards to the channels that I watched, Hellfire commentaries, Brain Scratch commentaries, Some Call Me Johnny, Game Grumps to an extent, these people, they were more, although I didn't realize it at the time, they were a bit more left-leaning, a bit more kind of liberal in their takes. They, or at the very least, the better way to say it is they weren't these like right-wing Gamergate chuds. In fact, some of the times they would outright call this stuff out. I didn't realize until I actually made a Twitter a few years ago, but Lewis from Brain Scratch Commentaries is extremely political and very left-leaning minded, and he's also a very intelligent person, and we know a lot of that goes hand in hand, but that's besides the point. The point is, somehow I managed to not totally escape, but really not be consumed like at all by the Gamergate type of stuff, right? It's just that the kind of video games that I was into and the kind of video game channels that I was into wasn't talking about that stuff. Because, I mean, we didn't have that stuff when it came to like Sonic or Mario or Zelda. No one was saying, oh, like, don't get me wrong, there was stupid shit people argued about all the time in the Sonic fan base. So I am well aware of all of that shit. It wasn't long ago where we literally had people arguing over the color of Sonic's eyes, or like recently, even last year, that they made his spines too short compared to what they were in the previous game. Like actual conversations, actual heated discussions people in the Sonic fanbase get into. So it's not like I completely escaped dumb discussion over things that don't actually matter. in video games. I very much did. It just wasn't in regards to the Gamergate type of stuff. So once I started becoming more politically aware and things of that nature, and I started watching different political YouTube commentators and stuff who were more on the left side, people who were, explaining things. And I remember people, especially Vosh, had a really good way of explaining things and not talking down to the audience, and making people kind of understand that, like, seeing like your struggles, but also saying that, like, listen, like, as a man, as a white person, as whatever it is, like, yes, like, your struggles are valid, but it's not because of X minority or because of women. Like, the dating struggles that men have are not because, like, women are bad or feminism ruined women or anything like that, but rather feminism is the answer to this. And he did this, like, incredibly good video explaining that and everything. And again, these are things I would get into more specifically if I ever do that video I keep alluding to. But kind of running through the cliff notes here, if you will. The point is, I, through that, started to become more interested in, like, political and social discussion in general, binged a bunch of his videos, started watching more other people who made this kind of content as well. And look, like I mentioned, I was really into, like, video game and movie reviews, so I wasn't like, I wasn't, how do I phrase this? I wasn't new to, like, the concept of video essays. Video essays to me are very similar to how a lot of video game reviews are done. And I was totally fine with that. I liked that. I understood that. I kind of fell into, conceptually, the idea of video essays. But I also really liked Let's Plays and the concept of streaming and stuff like that. So, it makes sense that a lot of this kind of stuff collided for me, right? I realized throughout, like, looking back on my own upbringing, and because throughout 2020, of course, like I mentioned, the whole thing with George Floyd, of course, also COVID hit, and I was already at a time deconstructing my religious beliefs, and ultimately came to the decision that I no longer believe this stuff, which was a very difficult thing to do. And again, could go into more detail in another video if that ever happens. But I had this very, like, I realized that a lot of what I believed was not sound. Like, I believed that things like abortion and being LGBTQ was wrong. Why? Because the Bible said so, or at least so I thought. I didn't realize until I actually started reading through the whole Bible that there is actually a entire story about how to perform an abortion. Essentially, it's called the test of the unfaithful wife, and it's about a priest mixing together a concoction to give to a woman in order to make her miscarry or have an abortion. Again, it could go into more detail, but not what this is about right now. So my point is, I was deconstructing my beliefs and all these different things, and ultimately came to the idea, and I've believed in this idea of there's not a one-size-fits-all way to live life for a long time. But of course, there was a caveat, and that caveat was religion, Jesus, Christianity, obviously, right? But the thing is, I understand where people are coming from, even if I disagree with them. Like, I understand my best friends and family that I have that still legitimately believe in, I say still, like they need to get out of it. They don't need to. Like, it's, to each their own. But, like, these my people in my life that do believe these things, do believe in, like, religious things and stuff like that, Christianity especially. I understand how they feel about, like, me and my soul and things of that nature, because I used to believe that. Like, I understand that this stuff, while to the outside it can easily look like it comes from bigotry and shoving beliefs down their throat, you have to understand their perspective. And that's what I try to do in all things, is understand the other side's perspective, even if I disagree with it, even if I vehemently disagree and I want to dissect it and kind of take it apart and speak against it, because for one, I know what that's like because I used to be that, but also I know what that's like because I live in Florida. I grew up around all of that. And I grew up around in an area that's a pretty good mix. Hell, even the church that I went to, we were relatively progressive, all things considered, to the point where, I remember we were more passive, I guess you could say, about certain political things. Like, I remember being in service the day that, either the day of or the day after, gay marriage was fully legalized, and our pastor just straight up said, he's like, basically, the law is what it is. We're going to respect that, but we also know what Jesus teaches. We follow the law of God's word, which is essentially a message of kind of like, Oh, and there was also very much this idea, and I like kind of ate it up too. Basically, like, yeah, sure, it's sinful to be gay or to be trans or whatever, but it's also sinful to like have any kind of sexual relation outside of marriage. It's also sinful to like use the Lord's name in vain. It's also sinful to do like all these other different things that people often do and were kind of are very commonplace. So yeah, it's sinful, but like it's not really any more sinful than like the things that I do that are sinful, or something like that, right? So I very much had that mentality. But what I realized eventually was that, especially after I deconstructed and everything. And by the way, just real quick on that, deconstruction does not necessarily mean that you leave the faith. That's what it meant for me, and that's what it means for some people. But there are people who deconstruct and still manage to stay a believer, like, and that's fine. Real quick on this, my like ultimate views on religion are essentially, I don't really care about what you believe. I care about what you do, who you are as a person, how you treat others, things of that nature. I don't really care about what you believe about, where you're going to go when you die, or how many gods there are, or if there are any gods or anything like that, or like what's going to happen to my soul, or what any of like the stuff that's outside of the world. I don't really care what you believe about that. I care about how you treat people in this world. Because, and that kind of leads to another point here, I don't care about politics like conceptually. I care about people. I care about people. I care about social issues, cultural issues, and things of that nature, but I don't care about politics in and of themselves, if that makes any sense. I have always wanted to do ultimately three things with my life, my career, etc., my purpose, if you will: inspire, entertain, and encourage. For years, I wanted to be an actor and musician, and again, these are things that I would get into more specifically if I ever did this, if I ever do that whole thing. But throughout 2020, a lot of things changed, and one of the things was me accepting that I couldn't be who I was trying to be for so long, and I had to reinvent myself, and I've been in that process ever since. I'm pretty much there at this point, but I went through a lot with this whole process. And when I decided to start making the kind of content that I am now, I realized that, yeah, I like and agree with a lot of the things that people like, Vosh, Hassan, Keffels, Xander Hall, Hunter Avalon, etc., are saying about different political and social issues. But I noticed I kept like pausing to interject my own ideas into things that they were talking about. And I realized, okay, clearly I have stuff to say about this, so why don't I just do that as well? It also helps that in 2020, I worked on a podcast with a friend of mine, in which we talked about like current events, essentially. A lot of things, but one of the big things was current events. And when we did this, I realized at a certain point that like I really like doing this. I like just talking about like things that are important to me and giving my thoughts and opinions on them. And so the idea of doing this was born. This channel, and specifically reaction content. A few reasons for that. One, let's be honest. I'll be honest with you. It gets more attention. When I was doing just like talking head type of broader discussion videos, it wasn't really gaining any traction. But reaction videos did, and I completely understand why. Like, it makes sense. I've talked before about how I kind of look at that, like, reaction videos as the new Let's Plays, and I really do. And as somebody who really likes Let's Plays and video game reviews and all that stuff, again, I think it makes sense that I would transition into wanting to do this kind of thing. Sorry, have allergies I'm dealing with as well. That's fun. But I understand that my takes, because I'm looking for nuance in all situations, because that ethos is nuance and discussion. There is a level of pushback that I get from both sides, if you will, of the political, social, whatever spectrum. There's an amount of pushback that I get, and it's disproportionate to the amount of positive reception. The negative reception that I get is disproportionate to the amount of positive reception. And it definitely makes me feel some type of way, because while I expect there to be criticism and I expect certain groups of people to possibly hate me, even, dealing with that is a little different than just thinking about it conceptually. And I want to be clear on this. I am not saying that I'm like under some kind of horrible attack or I'm being harassed or anything like that. I'm not saying anything like that. I don't want to make it seem like anything that, like, any, just because I'm getting like negative comments on my YouTube videos about, different, like, culturally relevant issues, that I'm, that I have or am experiencing anything on the level that people like Keffels or Nita Sharkezian or Zan or even Vosh or Hassan or anybody has gotten out on a level of harassment or even disagreement and pushback. I have gotten pushback. I have gotten people assuming things about me that just aren't true, and I'll address that stuff in a minute. But I want to be clear. I'm not being harassed, nor do I feel like I'm under threat or anything like that. Nor do I feel that nor am I in like a bad mental place or anything. I want to be perfectly clear on that. I'm not saying that, like, this isn't like a sympathy thing. This is just me getting out my thoughts to you about the way that I make content, and that, well, it might be changing, but we'll get into all that as we continue here. So I ultimately got to the point of, like I said, I've been doing this, like, reaction stuff for a while, and I noticed that people have been, I've gotten it from the woke scolds, I've gotten it from the chuds, I've gotten it from all kind of people who just, like, completely, again, disagreeing is fine, and if I'm wrong about something, I will gladly, like, I will show you. I've done it before, and I will gladly do it again and show that I was wrong, and that I will correct myself, as I did when I talked about and corrected my original take on deepfake adult content, we'll call it. I'm not above admitting to the fact that I was wrong. I don't think that I'm perfect. I'm not smug. I'm not anything like that. If anything, I actually struggle with a low self-esteem, but I'm working on that and working on building confidence and all that good stuff. Again, just being real. Just being real with you guys. The problem is, when I talk about, men's issues, we'll say, I'll get from woke schools, oh, you're misogynist, you're this, you're that, da 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 da. And when I talk about women's issues or, like, feminist type of stuff, I'll get, chuds from the right that are like, oh, you're some soy boy, whatever the case, right? And, like, a little bit of that here and there isn't really a problem, but we're going to go through the chronological order of a few of these videos that absolutely blow my mind. And they're some of the most recent ones. So, yeah. So the first one we have was, okay, this video, plane passenger refuses to switch seats and TikTok agrees. This was released 2 months ago. This was, yeah, and I'm still to this day getting primarily negative comments on this. The way this video came about is very simple. I had a friend send me, send in our group chat a video from TikTok, and it sparked discussion. It sparked a relatively healthy debate. We agreed to disagree, and that was it. Even the people that disagreed with me explained and said, I disagree with you, but I can see where you're coming from. My take was and is ultimately that, and I said this so many times in the goddamn video, that this man here, who has paid for, the man in the blue here, who has paid for the seat that he is in, the woman in the white behind him is trying to switch with him because she is the man on the right here with the beard. She is his husband. Now, this was my take. This guy, both of the people, the wife and the guy in the blue shirt here, are they're like this. All that her and by the time the video starts recording, the staff are asking the man in the blue to do, he'll be here, and the wife will be here, is to simply switch seats. Not where he's moving to like another side of the plane or anything else like that. Just a simple courtesy because she wants to sit next to her husband. She booked the wrong seat. It was a last minute flight booking. Like, it was a mess. Yes, it's her fault. No, he's not under any legal or moral obligation to do so. It would just be the kind thing to do. That is my take. But the amount of people who are mad about this, and I'm not logged into my channel right now, so I can't show you like all the dislikes, but the amount of people, actually I can, here, let me go ahead and just log into my channel. The amount of people mad about this. I mean, look, that is insane. Like, this isn't, you don't get to see dislikes unless you have that add-on or whatever. The amount of people mad about this, and most of these comments here, 260 comments, are very negative, was insane to me. Like, I explained my point several times, and what's wild to me is people look at this stuff and they act like I didn't say what they said. We're like, oh, he doesn't have to move. You're right. I never said he does have to. I said he should because it's the kind thing to do. It would be the morally right thing to do. I understand that when someone's in that position, they're just being an indignant asshole. And that was my whole point. I don't know if asshole means something different to these people, but to me, it just means somebody who's being a rude prick. Like, that's what he's doing. He's just being rude. He doesn't have to do anything. But the kind thing would be to just simply switch. Doesn't even have to move his luggage. Doesn't have to do anything. I don't get it. That's my point. And the amount of people angry at me for just advocating for human decency is insane. Now, again, not a harassment campaign, nothing like that. Just makes me feel some kind of way. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So the next video, though, that we're going to talk about here was, and some of these I'm surprised. Oh yeah, so yeah, this is the big one. The ugly video game women conspiracy theory. We're just gonna start here and show that we have 125 comments. Again, 11.5, 23 likes, and 177 dislikes. What was the other one here? $28 likes, 222 dislikes. Okay, so yeah, people are definitely more mad at Where'd it go? So people are more mad at the seat switching one, but like I'm gonna explain this one here. So the ugly woman video game conspiracy theory. So basically, there's this idea that Western video game companies making are intentionally making women less attractive, and it's all part of this agenda, because everything's an agenda and all these different things. And I basically looked at it and said that, I think this is a situation of technological limitations. We're in an uncanny valley situation, so on and so forth. And people have been on my case on it ever in this video ever since. Gamergate type of people doing the whole like, oh, woke, soy jack, whatever, that kind of shit, right? And some of the things that they've said are just completely incorrect. And it's funny that they got so mad about this because the thing is, I have done videos. The crazy thing is, I've talked about this kind of stuff before. I did an entire series of, well, so many people are wrong about women in comics, and there was a lot that I went into, but one of them was about the idea of objectification of women and stuff like that. I talked about the male gaze and reactionary progressives, the whole anti-sex, like, oh, let's just like desexify women, all that stuff, right? And I talked about conceptually, I talked about in the Spider-Man 2 PS5 game, which I finally got to play, by the way. It's a good game. I like it. But I talked about how we had great sign language representation, and that this is a great example of representation in general, by the way, because real quick on this, there's a character who does sign language, and they don't like shove it down your throat. She just does sign language as just part of her character. That's how you do representation. That's great. And her friends around her are doing sign languages as well, even if they're not talking directly to her, because they're still including her in the conversation. I thought that was great. That was like amazing when I saw that. I was like, oh my god, that's awesome. But we have the question here, ugly MJ with a question mark, because Amazing Spider-Man 2 has amazing representation, or Spider-Man 2 has amazing representation, but also a problem with the Uncanny Valley. My whole point with that was not that MJ is actually ugly, but that we have it's an Uncanny Valley issue. I've talked about this before, and I've talked about how women shouldn't be de-sexified, which I do agree that I don't think they're being made to look uglier, but I do agree that they are being desexualized in media, especially video games. And I disagree with that. A little bit of comics too, but especially video games. And I disagree with that. And I think that there is a bit of a double standard where women are being desexualized and men, if anything, are being more sexualized. And I think men and women should both be sexualized. Men and women, everybody should, adults obviously should have representation of sexually attractive aspects of them being on the forefront. So for one, people have examples of how to be that, and people also have examples of what to know to like, essentially. And also women should be encouraged to actually be more upfront about their own desires and stuff like that. But again, these are things that are not specifically what I'm going into here. The point is, I've talked about this stuff, and yet I do this video where and of course from this one I get oh, you're doing the the grifter kind of thing, right? I didn't really get much pushback on this one, the male gaze and reactionary progressives, but my argument is yeah, let women be sexy and make sexy men in media too. Simple as that. But I didn't get really any pushback from the from that one, but I did definitely for the amazing representation, but also and people were like, oh, you're doing the MJ's ugly thing. It's like, well, I mean, first of all, to me, yeah, she's not attractive, but I don't think she's ugly per se. But I've talked about this stuff, and then I talked about the game Stellar Blade, which But I did this video talking about Stellar Blade and all these different things, and the like, what. And again, I talked about before the whole thing where like I think that yeah, there is a desexualization problem, and women and men both, and everybody should be able to like have sexy representation and things like that. And I've talked about these things, and I get all these people who are like, "Oh, you're gaslighting, you're like all these different things, you're hiding this from people, and it's like, no, I'm not. I explained why I believe it's not true that they are or like intentionally making women ugly in media. Again, I agree that they are making women less sexy, and I don't agree with that. But like, that's not the same thing, And I have seen other people point this out too. That like, what you're really mad about is desexualization, and like, if that's what you're upset about, own up to that. Like, I can own up to that. But the thing with me too is I'm also very like sex positive in general, and I despise prudishness. I grew up with a very prudish mother, and I despise that like way of thinking and being and everything. So I I know what that looks like, and I very much fight against it. But I also like I have videos where I had this video adult performers are just like us, where I called it pro intimate work because I couldn't say sex work in the YouTube thumbnail, but yeah, like I'm for that, and I think part of the issue a lot of people have with people that get so mad about women being less sexy in media is that they want hot women in media, like movies, video games, whatever it is, TV shows, especially animated women. But when women have like an OnlyFans or do any kind of like sex positive thing of their own autonomy, they get all bent out of shape about it. And I think that yeah, like that is an issue. But for me, I'm very consistent in all that. Like, I think, I have a term, even for example, that I call slut praising, which is the opposite of slut shaming. And I think that it's what we all should do because, like, anybody should be encouraged to have, any kind of relationship, whether it be sexual, platonic, business, whatever it might be, have whatever kind of relationship they want. And women, people in general, should be encouraged to have sexual relationships with people that they want as well, as long as everybody's consenting adults. That's all that matters. I don't believe in like, oh, if you have like too high of a body counter. I think that's all a bunch of bullshit. And a lot of it's insecurity as well. But like I've talked about these things, and I've talked about like how I'm like pro all this stuff and everything, and then I get these people who like they think they know me, and one of the things they even got on my case where they're like, oh, you're virtue signaling with like your background and stuff, guys. This background nor this background are a virtue signal. What these backgrounds are, very simply, is when I was a little kid, my favorite color was green, then it was red, then it was blue. And around like 16, 17, I started thinking, what is my like new favorite color? And ultimately, I decided I don't really have a favorite color. So I really liked like all colors, right? Like the rainbow. And especially being a straight Christian, relatively homophobic because of my religious beliefs person, I knew that rainbow wasn't exactly the best thing to say was my favorite color. So I went with black. And black is my favorite color. Black goes well with everything. In art, black is the combination of all colors. I'm aware that in science it's the absence of color, but in art it is the combination of all colors. So I always really liked this rainbow aesthetic, whether it be a mix of all colors like this or a spectrum, a waveline like this. And this, by the way, yes, it is kind of cool because it's a spectrum, like a spectrum of ideas, spectrum of all this stuff as well. But it's also, this is a music wave. This is a wave. This is an audio wave, like a music thing. That's how I found this when I searched for it. Why? Because I love music. Like I said, I wanted to be an actor and musician before too. This is just a cool mix of colors, and I just thought it was fucking rad. But I mean, yeah, it could represent my like rambling ideas and scatterbrained like all that shit. Like 100% it could. But was that the original intention? No. And then hell, even this background, this is just white and black because, well, the idea is we're living in the gray because of the nuance. I just chose this background for this video because it's specifically this is kind of a response, if you will, to the first video I ever did with the same background. So, consistency and all that good stuff. But again, like my point with all this, people like, they see this stuff and they disagree. And I'm fine with people disagreeing. That's fine. But my problem is how disproportionate it is. And the other thing is, ultimately, I am trying to build a career. Like I said, I want to entertain, encourage, and entertain, encourage, and inspire. Yeah, inspire, entertain, and encourage. I want to, like, those are the things that I want to do. And I've been thinking about shifting focus to an entirely different channel, completely starting over, not under my name, and focusing more on a media analysis kind of thing. My views and everything, of course, would still shine through, because of course they would. No matter what you do, your views are going to shine through. But it wouldn't be as explicit as kind of what I'm dealing with now. And I just wonder, like, I also very much believe that we're always fighting the same fights. I've talked about this before, but I think that, the people who support today's progressive cause will be conservative against the next progressive cause. There are black people who marched in the civil rights that are very homophobic or transphobic, for example. There are women who either support or were a part of the suffrage movement, even back when they're who were against black people, gay people, so on and so forth. And of course, if you believe that being gay or trans is a choice, then there's a difference there between being black or a woman. However, I would disagree and say that none of this is a choice. But again, that's not really what this is about. I just noticed that there's a pattern of always having the same discussions, the same fights. And I think that a lot of people don't even want nuance. And I think especially the way that the algorithm works, it's kind of maybe even detrimental. Like, it's not really possible, because you either get people who are like sycophants who constantly agree with you, which is not what I want. I don't want an echo chamber. Or you get people who just hate you and are completely against you and everything you say, and I don't want that either. I don't want this like disproportionate thing one way or the other. I want nuance. I want balance, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to promote. But I'm not sure most other people do. And I think that because of that, it causes a lot of division. So what? What does this all mean? What's the point, right? Well, the point is, I'm thinking. I've been thinking for a while. And I've taken hiatuses before with my content creation. If this is something, if I'm ultimately trying to do, build a career and transition into doing this, being a content creator for a living, do I want to be covering hot button topics all the time? I don't have an issue with it, because again, I want to add that nuance and basically say, I understand this person's perspective, I understand this person's perspective, but here's my perspective, and let's like meet in the middle and figure out how we can agree about this. It just feels like people are so divisive, so divided, that I'm not even sure there's room for me to do what I'm trying to do here. And I'm not sure that I want to always be talking about this kind of stuff. I have major respect for all the people that do, especially the ones that are covering the news constantly, like Vosh and Hassan. But I can't do it. And I'm not entirely sure that I want to even focus just on social issues and like the culture war stuff, because I mean, I just don't know if, like, I don't think that I want to constantly involve myself in that, even though I'm trying to offer nuance and a positive bend on everything, a positive bent, whatever, a positive message. And I want people to listen to each other and to understand each other, even if you disagree, and understand that, like, the person who disagrees with you is not your enemy, not like this horrible, evil person. I've said before, even, that when it comes to, like, politically speaking, yes, I'm very left-leaning and I disagree with people on the right. And I think that the right the politicians on the right are monsters. I don't think that your average person, like all of my close friends and family, well, not all. Well, they're definitely more right than me. They're more right-leaning than me. But my most of the people close to me are right-leaning and relatively conservative. And I get along with them just fine because I love them, and like I said, I love people. We disagree on things, we have debate, we have discussion, but we care about each other, so we don't let it ruin our relationships. And I wish more people could do that kind of thing, but so many people, again, are so divided about this stuff. And ultimately, I want people to just chill the fuck out. But that's not the way that algorithms on the internet work or anything. I don't even know if I can do what I'm trying to do with how the algorithm works. My hope is that people would see, like, the catchy thumbnail. Obviously, it's clickbait. You gotta have a level of clickbait. A level of clickbait. My hope is that someone would, like, watch it, and then they'd start to, like, re-examine their own ideas, opinions, whatever it might be. But it's just like, man, I just want people to chill out. I just want people to chill out. I don't want people to assume that someone's either like a bigot or degenerate just because they think differently than them or live differently or whatever. Like, we're all people just trying to live life. And that's what I want people to do. Live life. I don't believe that there is an afterlife anymore, and I don't believe that there's a reason, a purpose, so to speak, to life. The purpose is whatever you make it. And ultimately, I would say it's to enjoy it, to make life as enjoyable for yourself and for others as you can. I believe there's not a one-size-fits-all way to live life. There are many different things that I'm still passionate about and that I would like to make content on in the way that I have thus far. Like, I really do want to do either a series or one video or whatever on what I want to call Pickup for Progressives, where I give actual practical advice that helps people get better with their dating life. How to improve, like, your physical appearance, how to improve your confidence, and all these different things, on how to ultimately be able to approach people that you find attractive and properly flirt with them, hit on them, ask them out, take them home, whatever it is you want to do and what they want to do, all while understanding and, like, doing things like respecting consent and all this other stuff. And maybe I'll do that kind of video or that kind of series at some point. I have to get good at it myself first. I'm still getting my own shit together. But, like, I do want to do that because I know there's so many charlatans out there and so much good advice that you have to, like, the charlatans are giving terrible advice for free, and there's good advice out there, but a lot of it you have to pay for, or it's not actually practical. It's like the be yourself. It's like, that's so, people need practical steps, practical advice. Because if being their self worked, they would already be okay. Like, you need practical a lot of people, myself included, need practical step-by-step advice. But anyway, like, I'm passionate about these things and I want to talk about these things, but it's like, also, most of the things that I've even gone through thus far, pretty much it. Like, I mean, all I could do at this point is keep going further into, specifics and readdressing things that I've talked about and so on and so forth. But, like, the big, broad concepts, pretty much I've covered most things that I really believe and am passionate about. Obviously, my views could change and I could talk about that, but, like, I don't know if I want to keep saying the same stuff over and over again. I don't know if I want to do this kind of content long term, the kind of content that I've been doing. This is just me talking to you guys. And I hope you enjoy it. I really do. I know it's gone on for a while here, but I really wanted to explain where I'm coming from, what my perspective is on things, and why I might be shifting focus to an entirely different channel. And hell, if I do that and I start, you know, really consistently doing that and everything, I'll let you guys know. Maybe I'll even make a, I don't want to say a final video because nothing is ever necessarily going to end, but something where I just kind of explain, hey, I'm focusing on this now. This is what I'm doing. If you like my views and stuff, you'll probably still like this, but understand that it is focused on media analysis, not just specifically cultural events. So, I don't know. Like when I say media analysis, I mean movies, video games, comics, TV, all that shit. And it also wouldn't be like your typical. It's the whole thing. I'll explain it on here if I ever really get going with that channel. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just wanted to share these ideas, and something else as I close with this. I have never said that anything that I've talked about is like 100% fact. The whole point of everything is that they're my thoughts, my opinions. I always ask what yours are to leave them in the comments down below. But I never, unless there are moments where I will like actually address specific facts and talk about those, but for the most part, not factual. For the most part, it's my opinions on things. You don't have to agree with them. You can disagree. That's fine. Just don't. I don't know. Don't be a dick about it. I don't understand the type. Like, there's so many like videos and stuff I've seen where I don't agree with everything they say, but I would never like. I don't know. I'm not like a lot of people online. I guess I've never been one to like just be extremely rude to people just because I'm like behind a keyboard or something. I don't know. Anyway, like I said, I just wanted to explain my thoughts and ideas once again. Explain the problems with nuance and discussion, and that why I might not be doing this format anymore. Doing what I've done on this channel. I don't have any plans at this time to delete everything or anything like that, but because I do want to make clear as well that I really do respect and appreciate all of you that are here so far. Yes, it's under even 300 subs, but like each and every one of you, 288 at the time of recording, you all matter. And I know a lot of creators and entertainers and stuff will say that shit and it might sound hollow, but seriously, I've always been a big believer that if I could just touch one person's life, that would be incredible. The fact that I've gotten this far and would continue to grow if I keep doing this is incredible. And the question is, what do I want to grow from? Do I want to keep making this kind of content? I know it would definitely, keep gaining traction, but there's so much more I have to think about than that. My own mental health, what impact I'm really having on the world, all those different things. So these are things for me to figure out and everything. But again, I just really wanted to share this with you guys, kind of get this off my chest and explain to you why I've been gone so long and why I may continue to be gone for longer. I don't know. But what I do know is, as always, these are my thoughts, my opinions, my ideas, my concerns, my everything. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. The link is in the description. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. And if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.